friend crush. I'm your host, Amber Akilla. This is my podcast where I talk about stuff and things, cute, chaotic, and critical thinking. I'm a DJ and a creative consultant. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Amber Akilla, and SoundCloud and Spotify for music playlists, mixes at Amber Akilla. Hope everybody is doing well. Today's episode is going to be maybe like a new subset of the podcast, like vibe check / Q&A. So I think I'll start the episode with just like thoughts I've been having, conversations I've been having, reflections I've been making, overthinking I've been doing, and then I will answer questions in the second half. So this is the first one, and I'll just like do a vibe check and then maybe just reference like some questions I've been asked in the DM recently, so we can all learn together or we can all share ideas together. And then underneath today's episode, there's a Q&A that people can respond to. And usually I can see the answers first and then I can pin them to make them public. But for the purposes of this episode, I will keep all of the questions private so that I can see them, and then I'll reply or like discuss some of the best questions in the next Vibe Check Q&A episode. And I won't reveal names or anything, so feel free to ask a question, drop a comment, leave feedback if you are interested in having it shared or discussed in the next Vibe Check / Q&A. I don't know like when the next one will be, because I'll just kind of slowly collect answers. So like, don't ask me anything that's like super time precious vibes. You know what I mean? And also like, depending on how many questions I get, I can't guarantee that I'll be able to answer every one. Sometimes there's overlap. You know what I mean? Okay. So vibe check. First thing, great news from my end. I went through like a really hectic breakup a while ago. And I won't go into like the details or the timeline because it's irrelevant at this point. But there was this one song that was kind of like central to the relationship to me, and also maybe my ex. You know, it was like a song that we listened to together. It reminded us of each other. And it's been really interesting, the journey and the way that my relationship with this song has changed over time. So during the relationship, it was like about love. It made me feel good. It made me feel like, you know, whatever in a relationship. Then our breakup was fucked, and the song would kind of remind me of grieving. It was like I almost couldn't listen to the song because I would just be triggered and start crying. Like it was kind of like, yeah, associated now with loss and grief, to the point where I had to unlike the song on Spotify because it was so triggering. And because the way that I listen to music on Spotify is just like shuffle of my likes. I didn't listen to the song for ages, and it wasn't like a mainstream song, but it is the type of song that's kind of like played in cool cafes, played in stores. It's like shop music. So I would hear it out and about and would semi-manage to like control my response. You know, like sometimes when you're in public, you kind of have to keep it together. And that was like good exposure therapy in a way, because it would come out at random times, but it wasn't like me driving in my car or whatever and the song would come up and then I would like have a breakdown. So didn't intentionally listen to the song for a really long time. And then the other day it came up on shuffle for like a radio or like playlist that I was listening to that I hadn't curated. And I literally felt nothing. Like I could listen to the song, I could enjoy it. I listened to it over and over again. Not a single tear was shed. So now I have like a whole new relationship with the song. I can reappreciate it. I can associate it with triumph, with independence, with kind of like opening like a new chapter almost. So I loved the song before it was associated with my relationship, and I hated so much that my relationship with the song was tarnished because of the way that the relationship ended and all the other things associated with it. But now, because I focused so much on processing my feelings, becoming aware of my thoughts, letting go of those thoughts, healing, working through the things that I needed to in order to move forward, and also like giving myself the space to grieve when I needed to grieve, etc., etc. You know, I have the training for a breakup episode. All of those things are from personal experience. I went through all those phases. I did all those things. And now I really feel like I'm out the other end. And I was already pretty over it for a while, have been quite over it for a while. But I think the fact that that song came up and I could listen to it without being triggered actually speaks volumes. Because literally, like, if you told me at the time of the breakup that I would one day be able to listen to that song and not be triggered, I would be like, yeah, maybe, but at the moment that doesn't feel possible. And the fact that it's possible now, it's happened, and I can be re-obsessed with the song in a new way, appreciate it again. Yeah, I'm proud of myself. So go me. And if you are in a grieving stage of your life right now, let me remind you that everything's going to be okay. And the real challenge, I guess, of life in general, like in regards to anything, not just breakups, not just relationships, but your work, your journey in general, I think, is being able to distinguish between the trees and the forest. The trees is like, day to day, each day. If you're navigating through a forest, you're going to be looking at different trees. But then by going and moving through the forest, you start to get a better idea of the bigger picture, what the forest is actually made up of, the direction that you're going. And if you focus too much on understanding what the forest is as a whole, then you're not going to be able to take any forward steps because you're thinking too much about something that you haven't actually explored yet. But then if you focus too much on the trees, you can lose your way or become so fixated on each tree and not think about like the direction that you're going. So it's kind of like this ongoing practice of zooming in, zooming out, zooming in, zooming out. I suppose that's what life is. That is what I've discovered up until this point. I mean, if anything changes in terms of my perspective and my approach, I'll let you know. But so far, I feel like that's the constant practice balance that we have to strike. And that's one of the biggest things that I learned from that experience, is that on the one hand, I needed to just take one step at a time out of the grief. And then I also needed to remind myself of like the direction that I wanted to go. And I think the biggest lesson as well that I learned from that relationship was that you should never give up the direction in life that you want to go in order to accommodate somebody else, whether they have consciously asked you of that or whether you are assuming that that's what they want of you. You need to always return to the path that you're on. And sometimes you don't know what that is. Sometimes you're so lost in the source that you don't even think that you have a path. You think that your life is supposed to complement somebody else's. But that's why it's so important to take the time out of feeling like you're obligated to placate other people's needs or to minimize yourself to make other people feel comfortable. Really own your own time and your own effort. Take responsibility for your feelings, take responsibility for your thoughts over a long enough time so that when you are in an intimate relationship, when you do have a new friendship, when you are in a new job, or when you're back at work or whatever, you can then kind of like practice that. You know what it feels like to be whole on your own, and anytime a trigger or a challenge comes up, that's an opportunity for you to actually rewire. Because I think, next topic, when we go into like hyper independence and the importance of being single, what I've learned is that if you don't know how to own your time, how to own your feelings, how to own your thoughts, how to take responsibility for your actions and the consequences that come with it, it's really easy to get into a relationship or a friendship or a new job and then kind of lose that sense of boundary, not even know where your boundaries are, because your boundaries aren't something that other people can assume from you. Your boundaries are actions that you take to distinguish between you and the rest of the world. Where do you start and end? And then where does the rest of the world, where do other people begin? And it can be really hard to do that because I wasn't taught how to do that when I was growing up. So I feel like it's also easy to think like, okay, I've spent all this time being single, I'm killing it, I know what I'm doing. And then you get into a relationship and what you've spent all that time learning suddenly goes out the window because you like this person and you want to maintain the connection and you're worried that you're going to lose them, whether consciously or subconsciously, and then you start kind of pulling back on your boundaries without even necessarily realizing. And another thing is like, you start to treat this new person or respond to their actions the same way that you did in whatever the last thing was that caused you to need to go on a healing journey to begin with. So for example, if it's like in a romantic context, it's like men aren't all the same in terms of like the way that they are individuals. I mean, obviously there's common threads in like dynamics and expectations that men might have, but you know, you need to treat each person that comes into your life as an individual, separate from people that have hurt you in the past. And I think it's really easy to, without even realizing, treat a new person the same way that you did the last person and then turn them into the same kind of enemy, if you know what I mean. So for example, I have a friend who, she likes this guy, and then, you know, a problem that she had in a previous relationship was that she kind of assumed this like mother role in the relationship and kind of not babying, but what a man would kind of interpret as like babying. You know, she wanted to know where he was, what time he would be coming home. If he didn't respond in time or give a timely update about his whereabouts, she would freak out and think he'd been like hit by a car. So it's natural for women to have the urge to want to nurture people in their life in general. And the thing with a lot of dudes is like, you know, men are not always that clued in sometimes, whether it's intentional or not. And women, it will activate this like nurturing motherly part of women. And women, without even realizing, will start to baby these boys because they think, oh my God, I need to help them, I need to protect them, but they made it this far without you, okay? And everybody is responsible for their own life. And you do need to kind of give people the space to just show you how they communicate, how they handle their life, especially in the early stages of a relationship. Because I think what I've learned is that you can't change anyone and you can't expect to change anyone. That doesn't mean that people don't change. That doesn't mean that you're not changing. But you don't even have much of an idea of how you're going to change in the future. So how can you assume you have any control over how someone else is going to change, let alone how they can change to just meet what you want? You know what I mean? So that's why it's so important to have a clear sense of self, be able to take responsibility for your own feelings, to feel and exist as like a contained person unit, so that when other people and challenges and whatever come into your life, if you're triggered, you can take full responsibility for that first before you start making it seem like it's somebody else's fault that you're hurt. Obviously, if someone's going out of their way to hurt your feelings or it's a very close relationship, you should be able to communicate with them how you feel, what you might prefer. But I think it's better when you've taken the time to regroup, recenter first, and then broach that subject. Because it's easy to be like, well, you didn't tell me when you were coming back and that upset me because I expect you. And then it's just like, nobody wants to date a nag, okay? You don't, so why would they? And my friend is seeing this guy and he didn't respond. Well, he didn't update after saying he was like going out to some event. And I said to her, look, just don't worry about what he's doing. Just focus on what you have to do. Plenty of activities that you can participate in while he's doing his thing. Just see what it takes for him to come back to you, because then you're really able to gauge his interest. And also just giving someone the opportunity to miss you is important. And men are generally conditioned to protect their autonomy more than women are, which brings me to our next topic. Boundaries. So for women, which is most of my audience, what I observe in myself and around me is that firstly, we're not even taught how to have boundaries. We're actually taught to be more accommodating to people around us, to put other people's needs and prioritize other people over our own. It's so common for women to have a people-pleasing kind of complex and to think that we need to make sure everybody else is feeling good until we feel good. So everybody else gets to feel good first, and then I'll give myself permission to feel good. That's what makes me feel good, making other people feel good. But sometimes you don't even realize how you're crossing or minimizing your own boundaries for other people. And obviously there is compromise, etc. But it's important to remember and to take the time and put in the effort to, again, take responsibility for your feelings, your thoughts, and your boundaries so that you can be self-contained, and then you'll meet people that are on the same wavelength as you. You're not going to be hoping that someone comes along that's going to elevate you. You're going to be at your elevated state with another person at their elevated state, and then you can support each other together rather than this tug of war, push-pull, codependence. That's very common. So imagine, before I've spoken about boundaries are like the fence that you put around your property. How are people going to know if you have boundaries, if you just have drawn a line around the grass, right? You need to build the fence and then decide who can come in, who can come out. And the thing with a lot of women, or a lot of people in general maybe, because obviously I think at the end of the day we're all human and we all sort of have to deal with these different sorts of traumas, dynamics, etc. So when we talk about boundaries, it's under the assumption that we know where the house is, we know what's in the house, we know where the property extends to, we know where the line around the property is, and all that's left is building the fence. But in reality, sometimes you don't even know where the boundary of your property is. You're not even really sure what your house looks like. And the door's open and everybody's inside your house. It's open house party and your house is getting trashed. That is literally how some of us are living. That's how I was living at certain stages of my life. I didn't know who I was. I didn't have a clear idea of who I was. I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted. I was letting other people kind of dictate my sense of self. And I was expecting someone to just kind of know what my boundaries were, even though I had no fucking idea what a boundary even was. And that's okay, because it's something that I think a lot of us have to go through in order to actually learn who we are and what our boundaries are. And that's something that's constantly changing throughout our lives, and what my boundary was at one stage might not be my boundary at another stage. The fact that I had no boundaries around something at one stage doesn't mean I can't now have boundaries around that. So self-compassion is so important, and it's not about if you're a good or a bad person, whether you have boundaries or not. You're just a person, and being able to accept where you're at, looking at your house and being like, holy shit, my house is getting trashed by all these people who I don't even like that much, who I don't really care about that much, who don't seem to really care about me because they're trashing my fucking house. How big is my house? What's in here? Okay, go through the house, kick everybody out, and then start to clean up the house. Okay, that might be by meditating, journaling, regular exercise, making sure that you're eating healthy, lots of vegetables, fruits, drinking lots of water. Maybe you need to go to therapy. You need a professional to come in and help you clean up your emotional house, okay? I said in a previous episode, in the breakup episode, it's if I have a plumbing problem, I could maybe go on YouTube and figure out how to fix it myself, but it would be much more efficient for me to call in a professional and pay them to help me look at the plumbing and then help me fix it. And that's the same thing with therapy, I think. Yes, you can learn a lot on your own by reading books, watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, but it's going to be more efficient if you get a professional, if you can afford it, if you have access to it, and you ask them to help you look through your emotional house and give you advice on how to manage and clean up shop. You know what I mean? And the same way that it can be hard to find the right plumber to help you fix your plumbing problem, it can be hard to find the right therapist to help you clean your emotional house. But maybe that's something that you need to do, because for me, I definitely was at a stage where I was I can read all this information and watch all these videos, but I still feel like there's a little gap that I need to close, and I feel like it would be much more efficient if I just was able to tell someone exactly what I've been through, tell someone what my family background is, what my childhood was like or whatever, all the different traumas I've experienced, and then they can help me connect these dots and work through it in a more efficient manner. And that's what I did. And now the song that used to make me cry, I can now enjoy and sing along to. So yeah, you need to clean up your emotional house, realize what's in your house, and then think about the different areas that maybe you want to renovate, the extensions that you want to add. That is like a metaphorical reference, an analogy for like maybe you want to switch up your style, maybe you want to change jobs, maybe you want to get new friends, maybe you need to kick out old friends, whatever. So then you've taken the time to clean your house, and then you can look outside the property. Okay, where are the boundaries of the property at, and how can I build a fence in order to separate my emotional house, my emotional property, from the rest of the world, from other people's emotional property, right? And that process might take you months, might take you years. And the thing is, it's like you can't clean your house and have a party at the same time. I mean, you can try, but it's not going to be very efficient, right? You're like trying to clean the house while other people are in the house. And I think this doesn't mean that, okay, but when you're in your healing process or whatever, cleaning your emotional house, that you need to completely isolate yourself from the world. But it just means you can be mindful of who you're letting in, right? You might spend some time cleaning, and then you're going to let someone in. You can show them around, maybe just a few rooms, not the whole house. And then you're like, okay, thanks for coming by. And then you tidy up again and see, okay, what kind of impact did that have on my emotional house? Did they leave a mess? Were they respectful of my house, of my time? And then you can sort of take baby steps instead of thinking, okay, I cleaned this room and I cleaned that room. Now I'm going to have a party. Now the rest of the house that I didn't clean is trashed, and the rooms that I just cleaned are also trashed too. So I don't know how to make like an exact analogy, but like, do you get the idea? I'm saying that, so for example, if I was going through a breakup and my whole world was shaken, my whole emotional house is shaken, and I need to clean up shop. So things that I would be doing would be things I mentioned in the breakup training for a breakup episode. Meditating, journaling each day. So maybe each day in the morning I'm doing a meditation and I'm journaling and I'm stretching. So that would be me doing a once over of the house, right? Then, maybe a few times a week I hang out with my friends. So I am still cleaning every morning, doing a tidy up, then going out of the house, letting someone into the garden, have a chit chat, enjoy our time together, then, part ways, get back to my daily routine. Then if I'm going to be intimate and in a romantic situation again, it's like, okay, I feel confident that I have a good idea of where my house is at. It's not perfect, but I'm confident that I can, maintain a daily routine of tidying up, and I know when I need to exit a situation or when I need to draw a boundary. And that is when the cleaning that you've done, the routine that you've created, is really put to the test. Because if you're like in your hyper independent single mode, which sometimes is necessary, making sure that you're very vigilant about who comes into the emotional house while you're cleaning, or not letting anyone in while you're cleaning, that's okay. Different stages of your life require different approaches. But it's easy to have boundaries when you aren't talking to anyone, when you aren't hanging out with anyone, when you're not dating anyone, right? It's easier to have boundaries when you hate men. God forbid you like one again, or you are into someone of any gender again, regardless of what your gender is as you're listening. Then you need to test if you're able to maintain that routine that you've built. Because just because you like someone doesn't mean that gets thrown away, right? This brings me to my next topic. Pick me seeds. So pick me girl trope has been discussed a lot in the last few years, and it's like, girls who say they're not like other girls because they are able to placate or accept disrespect from men. And I actually think that the pick me seed is something that is planted in almost every woman. Like, it's basically unavoidable because of the society that we live in and the values that are upheld and the way that women are treated and the bare minimum that we're expected to be okay with, or the disrespect that we're supposed to or expected to tolerate, The pick-me seed exists within all of us, okay? Maybe you're different, but I'm not. I definitely have that in me. And it can lie dormant for a really long time, especially when you're in your hyper-independent, single phase, loving life, killing it in your job, etc., etc. But as soon as you like somebody, that can be fertilizer for the seed. That might start watering the seed. You might have insecurities that start coming up, and the seed starts to bloom. It wants to germinate. It wants to grow into weeds and take over your whole brain. Sometimes we're conscious of this, sometimes we're not. But I think the key is to just have an awareness of the pick-me seed. And anytime there's an urge to water it, try to stop. Stop the water from hitting the seed. Stop the fertilizer from fertilizing the seed. And it's okay, sometimes it'll grow into a little weed, it'll sprout. Remind yourself that you have the power to stop it from taking over your brain, from taking over, growing all over your house. So I think that that's the challenge. It's easy to think that when we're in our hyper-independent phase, I don't need a man, I don't need a relationship, I'm killing it, whatever. But then you actually like someone and you're like, oh, fuck, now I'm actually put to the test. So you might get like 90% of the way, but that last 10% can't truly be, the last 10% of the house can't be finished off. Like the final finishings of the house won't be done until you allow yourself to be vulnerable with someone again. And then you're also able to maintain the routine or the practice of cleaning that you developed in that hyper-independent, in that single state. Does that make sense? Because we think the pick-me seed wants us to think that when the relationship comes along, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, that all our problems will go away, that we can let go of all the work that we've done, and it's just going to be easy. That's how I feel like I've been conditioned to think. Like the relationship's going to come along and all your problems will go away, even though I consciously know that that's not the case, and that relationships require work, they require communication, there's challenges as well. The relationship can't fundamentally change you as a person. It can only change the circumstances that you have to deal with. Like when you're single, you're just dealing with your own needs and you can focus on yourself. When you're in a relationship with someone else and you've made a commitment, now you have to consider two people's needs, right? That's more work, okay? Nobody can tell me in a logical way that that's somehow easier. If you want to be in a healthy relationship, or the type of relationship that I personally would aspire to. Because, some people enjoy the codependence and the toxicity. That's none of my business. But I don't want that, okay? Even though the pick-me seed is there and might grow into a weed and take over my brain and allow me to think that that's the case, which it has in the past, I'm now at a point where it's like, okay, I know the seed is there and I don't want it to grow. I want to make sure that it lies dormant forever. And if there's any signs of germination, I can kill it off. Because I am not the pick-me seed. I am the house, the emotional house that I've been renovating, cleaning, looking after, setting boundaries around, building a fence around, decorating, and now I'm putting the final touches on. The house is always changing, right? Nobody's house stays the same forever unless you are not looking after your house. So the pick-me seed is just a seed. It is but a small little seed that exists in the garden that, if fertilized and watered, will grow and then swallow the whole house, right? That's kind of how I imagine it. And we end up putting too much emphasis on the pick-me seed because that's what society makes us think that we are. That's all that we are. We're just waiting for a relationship to come along and save us, and all our problems will go away as a result. But that's not the case, because the pick-me seed grows, it takes over your whole house, and suddenly you have no house, or you can't even get into the house because the weeds have taken over all the windows and the doors, and you can't open the door anymore, and then you have to burn the whole house down and build it all up again. That's what happens in a toxic relationship, right? The pick-me seed's grown, you didn't realize, takes over the house, and now you need to build a new house all over again. So if you can manage the pick-me seed, the weeds, making sure that you're not letting them grow or germinate, or if they do grow, you can nip it in the bud, clean up shop, then you'll be able to enjoy your house instead of getting, a little bit complacent or lazy and letting it grow, and then without even realizing your house has been taken over. Does that make sense? So yeah, I think it's easy to think that in our independence, we've got everything figured out and it'll be easy the next time we get into a relationship. But when you like someone, your feelings are activated again, you're fantasizing about them, you are enjoying your time together. And if you have been conditioned to think that a relationship is what defines your self-worth, whether consciously or subconsciously, like sometimes it's really, really deeply rooted. Like you don't even realize, because think about like all the bossiest girl bosses that you know that are making terrible decisions in love. I know of plenty, and I was one of those girls. So just because you have certain areas of your life under control doesn't mean that the parts of you that get activated in a relationship only, which is the pick-me seed, are being addressed. It's lying dormant. And then the relationship and liking someone and being vulnerable again is like the watering and the fertilizer for the seed. And yeah, only when you actually like someone is it going to be activated. Because if you're in your like primo independent single mode, the attention that you're getting from people that you don't really like isn't enough to activate the seed, because you're like, ew, ick, ew, not into you. And you think like, I've got this under control. But when you like someone, that is the fertilizer and the water for the seed. So just be aware of that, is what I'm saying. Okay, next vibe check is going to be about hinge cringe and just hinge dating apps in general. So I haven't been on dating apps for ages. No plans to go on them, to be honest. I've seen too many terrible screenshots. And, I've heard like some nice stories about dating apps, but it's just not for me. Okay, I don't judge people that are on them. I judge people a little bit who are on them and having consistently terrible outcomes and continuing to go on them. But it's your life, okay? Do whatever you want. Everybody's at a different stage of their journey. You're not done till you're done. But I had someone reach out to me and say they were sifting through the hinge cringe highlights, which I'm actually thinking about deleting soon because I'm so over it. Like I don't even want to see what's going on dating apps anymore. It's too depressing. And she said, yeah, sifting through your hinge cringe highlights and other dating men videos got me thinking to seek out your thoughts. I matched with a guy on Hinge the other day by liking and then commenting on one of his prompts to motivate a conversation to happen. TBH, I spent ages fixating on something interesting to say, but his prompt answers were fairly generic, but he was eyeball emoji, hot. I ended up giving a generic comment. Okay, so already from the jump, it's bland and bland. Anyways, he ended up matching back later that day, but he hasn't responded to my comment, which I find kind of ... strange. I said something like, all right, let's debate X and X, because he said he liked X thing. So I don't know, I would have thought since he matched, it would have been his cue to say something. I know it doesn't matter much because it's low stakes and a stranger, but I'm keen to know your thoughts on the psyche of a man on Hinge who will match but not initiate a convo, lol. I usually don't have a problem with making a move first with guys, but I feel like it would be weird if I double texted, and I can't think of anything to say that wouldn't be weird since the ball seems to be in his court. I'm also new to Hinge and dating apps, so maybe this is normal male behavior. Should I bother to follow up with a message if I'm keen, which I am because he's cute, or just leave it and consider it dead? Okay, rest in peace, because city girls are down. But it's okay. I appreciate people who tune in, and we're all at different stages, and we've also been conditioned to think that men are the prize, which they aren't. So let's begin. My response was, I don't use dating apps, so I can't speak on direct experience. I would consider it dead. Just because someone is cute doesn't mean that they're smart or respectful. And I think a lot of people in general are on apps to kill time and get superficial validation, which has been reflected back to me when I ask people what they're doing on them. If you look at the Hinge Cringe highlight on my Instagram, I guess I'll keep it up there for the purposes of this episode, but a lot of people replied saying that they're just on dating apps to swipe and get superficial likes and ego strokes. Not saying that some people aren't there looking for love, but people that are looking for love go after it. People that are serious about looking for love will take action towards it. And whatever is stopping someone from taking action is not your problem, not your responsibility to figure out and unpack for them, because they're not doing it. Why do you need to do it? You have your own problems, which is caring too much about what other people's problems are. You know what I mean? We've all been there. So I said, move on with your life. In the meantime, maybe he'll come around or maybe not. Don't worry about it because you've never even spoken to him, let alone spent time with him. Your brain has created an imaginary relationship that you've become invested in before he's even said anything. Remind yourself of that, be self-compassionate and keep it moving. So this leads me into the delusions and illusions conversation that we need to have about how your mind starts running a bajillion miles an hour before you've even taken one step with somebody. You know what I mean? Like in this situation, they've just matched. They haven't even had a conversation yet. He hasn't even said anything, and his profile is boring. But already she's like written a story about, she's made all these assumptions, which is natural for us to do. Like it's part of the human experience to project into the future, this cognitive dissonance between where we are and where we want to be. But just because we want to be somewhere, or just because our brain has generated these irrational thoughts, doesn't mean that we have to be jumping the gun in terms of how we act in reality, okay? One step at a time. So at all different stages of a relationship, you are at risk of making a lot of assumptions about the direction of where you're going or who this person is, what they represent to you. But you need to really think about, like, how well do you know them? And a lot of people say it takes, minimum a year to really know somebody. And I think especially when you're physically intimate with someone, that is its own very specific type of intimacy, which can be great, can be fun, chemical releases in the brain, etc., skin to skin. But that doesn't mean that you're experiencing life with them. When you have sex with someone, you're not like discovering what it's like for them to deal with a crisis, how they handle stress, how they deal with miscommunication, They're different things. It's okay to enjoy one, but don't assume that enjoying one thing or participating in one thing is somehow the same as another thing. Just because you're talking to someone about what your preferences are in a relationship, who someone describes themselves to be, how you describe yourself to be, doesn't mean you've seen that in action yet, right? You haven't really seen it play out yet. So just be patient, one step at a time. Look at the trees, remember that you're going through a forest. So I showed this to a friend, and she said, which I think is also valuable, so well, she's like, oh my God, I can't. She's taking Hinge way too seriously. Poor girl. Not replying is very, very normal. She needs to remember that she doesn't know the guy at all. He probably just wants some validation, or he's talking to a bunch of other people and just hasn't replied. He's literally just a picture on a phone right now. He might not even look like his pictures. He could be short. He could have a bad voice. He could have a micro penis. She's thinking too far ahead. She looks cute from her DP, so she doesn't need to do this. She also seems pretty young, but she'll learn soon enough. And this literally comes from scarcity mindset, seeing him on the app and being like, oh my God, he's cute, we need to talk. But there's a lot of cute guys out there who will make the effort to talk to her. No double texting on the apps. So that's important to remember. Even when you're like a few months into something, you don't really know someone. They're still just someone you've only spent a little bit of time with. Think about how long it might have taken you to know the patterns of some of your good friends. For me, like 2 years. When I think about how long it took me to see my friends for who they are, understand their patterns of behavior, and truly accept them as that, you need to be aware that that's how long it takes in a romantic relationship too. If not, even longer. I mean, in the episode I had with Derrick G, he talks about his relationship with his wife. They've been married for 10 years. And he said one of the most important things is to never assume that the other person is going to stay who they are, or giving each other the room to change, giving yourself the room to change and develop, and accepting and supporting that in each other. And some people can do that for you for 10 years and more, the way that it has for Derrick and his partner. But for other people, maybe it's just a few months, maybe it's just a few years, and then you part ways and you find somebody else, or you enter a new chapter in your life. I think it's important that we take the time to understand that and accept it. So take it easy, ladies. You don't need to jump the gun, and let men pursue you, okay? If a guy is really serious about connecting with a woman, he's going to step his pussy up and figure out how to do that. And sometimes they're just not ready. I think about guys that have been flirting with me for years, okay, joking about how we should hook up, joking about how we should make out. And it's like, are you going to set a date or not? Are you going to ask me out like a real man or not? Because in between all of this back and forth, love heart, eye emoji, flame emoji response bullshit, I've been actually hanging out with men that put in the effort to get to know me, right? And I'm not going to emotionally invest in just this idea of being with someone, or just somebody being able to validate me and not actually take action. That's just me though. Final thought is the digital restraining order. Okay, we've talked about digital distancing, we've talked about orbiting and breadcrumbing. My final point for this episode. I think there's like these new features on TikTok and probably soon on Instagram where you can see who's been looking at your profile. Me personally, I don't want to know too much, okay? I literally post on my Instagram stories under the assumption that people are watching my stories from the toilet. It's not that deep. Pump and dump content. Because people are exposed to so much content every day anyway. Like, I'm not going to assume that I'm the most important thing that they see every day. And if you are being breadcrumbed or orbited by someone is like watching your stuff and either not taking action, or you've broken up and you're sick of them, or that, you know, you're just not into it anymore, it makes you feel some type of way. It can be difficult to make the move to block or remove as a follower or unfollow. But honestly, protect your peace. And people are like, oh, you don't want to seem like you care too much. I get it. It's normal for your ego to kick in and be like, I'm the least bothered. But honestly, it is your digital space, and that's an extension of who you are. You have to be the police and protect it. So enforce a digital restraining order if you must. Feel free to remove people, unfollow people, block people, normalize it. Because even if somebody else takes it and is like, oh, they care way too much, blah, 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 they care too, clearly. And if they don't care, it doesn't matter because you don't care either, or you want to get to a place where you really don't care. So the digital restraining order, I support it, okay? Don't jump the gun, give yourself some time to think about it. Okay, am I really done with this person? Can I imagine my life without them? Do I think my life would be better without this energy? Checking to see if they're watching me, checking to see what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. If the answer is yes, even if you feel kind of like, I don't want to care too much about it, just do it. I've definitely hesitated before. I've mulled over it for months, and then when I've done it, I have never looked back, not once, never regretted it, because I'm creating space in my life for something that is more compatible to the person that I am now, because we're all changing all the time. We all want to heal and move on and grow and develop, and if that's important to you, then you need to cut dead weight, okay? You can only carry so much with you throughout different stages of your life, unfortunately. And I think it's better if you can give yourself the space from people to, for your relationships to ebb and flow. You're close in this moment, give yourself space. Maybe down the line you'll be close again. I think that's fine. But sometimes you've been hurt too badly, or sometimes you're just truly incompatible and you need to cut ties for real, because it's triggering you too much. And then once you have dealt with that digital restraining order, you need to go back to your emotional house and clean up shop. Get rid of any stains that they left in the carpet type thing. Okay? So, that's today's episode. Thank you for listening. A little bit all over the place, but sometimes it's hard for me to fully flesh out a whole episode on one topic, and I can just kind of give my thoughts periodically about something and then see how I can maybe flesh it out for a full episode later down the line. And then also you can leave me feedback in the Q&A section. Let me know which topics you want me to expand on more. Let me know if you have any questions for the next vibe check / Q&A or feedback, comments, and I will share in the next episode. I'll keep it anonymous, so you can leave questions. I won't pin anything, so I'll keep it just on my end. And then I will discuss in the next episode, and I won't reveal names or anything. But you can if you want to gender it or whatever, you can do that. And then we can be like, oh, this is a woman-man dynamic, man-woman dynamic, man-man dynamic, whatever. But at the end of the day, the context is not as important as the dynamic itself. That's what I want to get to the root of, okay? Because a toxic dynamic can manifest itself in many different ways. At the end of the day, we want to address the dynamic at play, not just the details. And we get caught up in the details and thinking that we're so special and unique in our circumstances, when in reality, the dynamic is just the same as something someone else has dealt with. So yes, thank you again. Please leave me a question and a comment, and I will share for the next episode. Make sure you follow me at Amber Akilla on TikTok, Instagram, and Spotify and SoundCloud and Twitter. And the Instagram / meme page for this podcast is at friend.crush on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. I'm so grateful. And yeah, good luck. You are hot and having fun. Don't forget. And make sure that you tell your friends and family that you love them. And make sure you drink lots of water and you go be a better person. Bye.